Hey guys, I am Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft. Today we're going to continue our discussion on the different styles of bicycles that we might run across or that we might be interested in. Now last time we talked about our road bike or our racing bike, a nice lightweight bike. Today we're going to jump to the other extreme. This is a mountain bike. This bike is the absolute tank of mountain bikes. And I say that because this thing is so tough, you can pick it up, throw it off the roof of your house, pick it up and ride it off and not have a lot of issues at all. They're just built like an absolute, like a tank. So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of this bicycle when it comes to touring. And let me just say, a lot of people actually tour on these bikes with a few modifications, and we'll talk about those as we go along. The frame itself, very heavy duty. Some of them are still aluminum, some of them go with a chromoly, and some of them are even still using a steel frame, which does make the bike heavier. But heavy is not always a bad thing, because many times when you start thinking about the heaviness of a bicycle material, you're also talking about the strengths. The areas where this bike frame comes together and is welded and molded are just absolutely rock solid. Unless this bike is run over or a tree falls on it, you really don't see a lot of problems with the frames, especially at the different wear points, like where your pedals go through. There's cartridges and such that go in there and threads that have to be maintained. And on some of the bikes, if you don't get it at just the right amount of tension, they can work loose and cause you problems, or you can over tighten them and strip them out. And we have a lot less problems with these chromoly and these heavier aluminum frames with that particular problem. Now this is a Cannondale, and this is the bike that I used when I was on the Emergency Medical Services bike team. It comes set up for being able to carry a pretty heavy duty rack on the back, which allows you to put some bags back here on the sides and on the top. It has a suspension system built into it. There's a shock absorber built right here into the front stem that gives you some relief on the hands. And there's also a shock absorber built right here on the seat stem, which allows you to float a little bit in the saddle. And there's some adjustments in there depending on your weight that allow you to get a little bit of a smoother ride in some extreme rough territories. Now with that said, right now I have this set up with an extremely wide aggressive tire, and that is made for serious off-road riding. The last time I took this bike out, I was riding on a very narrow trail in Western Virginia, and it was a very technical trail and I needed a lot of grip. But with these rims, it allows me to put a tire on that is much smaller, a city slicker type tire, that would be more appropriate for riding around town. So there's a lot of versatility in this bike, just dependent on the tires that you run on it. And there's all kinds of tires that are in between that have like knobbies on the outside edge and road slicks in the center, or even just like a water shedding tread in the center, but yet it has some knobbies on the side so that if you start to sink down in the sand or mud a little bit, it gives you some grip. But while you're out on the road and you have those pressures up in the 50s and 60 pound range, you're riding on the center of that tire, which gives you a lot easier ride on the road. And when I say easy, I mean that it's easier to pedal. You're not working so hard. An aggressive tread like this will wear out extremely fast on the road. It vibrates and it's not as easy to pedal. So a lot of versatility in this bike depending on the tires that you put on it. A good sturdy frame. Probably the biggest problem that people would have with using a mountain bike on the roads and trying to cover great distance is the position that you're riding in. There is a tendency to have the bars in a position that would put a lot of weight on your shoulders and your forearms, because you're not sitting up and you're not completely leaned over like you would be on a road bike or a racing bike. You're in that semi-sitting position. But one of the ways that you can combat that is by doing what I did. And I put a custom stem, well, it's not custom, it wasn't made for me, but it was not the stem and the riser here that came standard on this bike. I simply went to a local bike shop. I put myself in a position with my hands over the bar that I thought would be comfortable and measured that, and then they helped me order one that indeed put me in a position that was a lot more comfortable. And the expense was not that great compared to going out and buying a new bike. I was able to take my bike, and I bought this bike, it was fairly well used, and I had just taken a bicycle repair course, so I used this as an opportunity to completely strip this bike down to the frame, clean the frame up, and every single piece of this was rebought and put back onto this bike. Now, I don't recommend that you do that unless you're a bicycle mechanic and you just want the experience of doing that. You can buy a lot of mountain bike on the market right now for your money, and you can get into a really nice bike for just a few $100s. And when I say a few $100s for a bike, a lot of people are going to say, wow, that's a lot of money. But it is, but a good bike in today's standards, excuse me, aircraft just cut off his engine and did a restart right on top of us. Anyway, you can buy a lot of bike for the money right now that will last you a lifetime. A little bit of maintenance and care, and these steeds will carry you for an extremely long time. The nice thing about a mountain bike is that it is probably one of your most versatile bicycles as far as being able to ride on the road, being able to ride in extremely rough conditions, your ability to load it down with a lot of gear both front and back, the versatility of putting packs and bags on it, and there is also an option that you can pull a trailer behind this, which I did several times on some major tours that I went on where I was taking all of my camping equipment with me. The toss-up is always seems to be between touring bikes and the mountain bike as far as whichever is the best. But in my opinion, if I had to have just one bike and I was looking at something that I could use for road use, off-road use, a bug-out vehicle, a bike that I could use to load down with all of my camping gear and go out for multiple days, I think a good quality mountain bike would rate very highly on my list. So thanks for joining me once again as we talked about the mountain bikes and the different things that are versatile about that. I've spoke a lot now about the advantages of them. Probably the only disadvantage is finding one that fits your body well, and also the weight. They are the heavier in the bike spectrum of what we'd be looking for. But like I said, sometimes that weight thing means strength. You have to kind of toss up the advantages and disadvantages of that. But a lot of mountain bikes can be found at a reasonable price. So thanks for joining me once again. I'm Tim Lanks with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. Until next time, God bless.